Good morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you may be watching. Today is September 11th, and as I record this video, Justin Trudeau is going to Parliament Hill to dissolve Parliament and call the next federal election in Canada. It's the 43rd such occurrence. And this is going to be a quick video for Americans and those across the world who don't know much about Canadian politics, just what's going to be happening over there, and more importantly, how it could affect us here in the US of A. So like and subscribe and hate and comment. So first of all, you may be asking, what do you mean he's calling an election? So in Canada, they don't do set terms. Now technically in their law, they do have a rule that said that they had to have an election by October 21st unless Parliament decided to make it later, and that's what they're doing today. Parliament will dissolve. Justin Trudeau will have an election that'll last about 6 weeks. And Canadians love to say that we don't have long-term elections like we do in America. Yeah, right. People have been running for this office for well over a year. Now, with that being said, here's a quick overview. There's 336 members of the House of Commons that will be elected. They are all elected at the same time. They are divided between the 10 provinces and 3 territories. And you need 170 to make the majority, generally speaking, in Canada. Whoever gets that, even if they don't get a majority and just a plurality, they generally do lead. And they do get what's called a 5-year mandate, which means they get to rule for 5 years, even though there is an act that says that they're supposed to call an election in 4 years, unless they just kind of change their mind. Or they have what's called a no confidence vote, where they just say, we hate you, Prime Minister, and we're making a new election. That's sort of how it works. Now, the 2 major parties are the Liberals, who have been in power since 2015, and their leader is Justin Trudeau, which is this guy right here. I know, pretty steamy for a lot of people out there. And what people don't quite get in America is that the Prime Minister is way more powerful than the President. Now, that seems like crazy talk because, of course, the President could nuke everybody. Yes, we know that's in his power. But in reality, the president is just the head of the executive branch, where the prime minister is not only the head of the executive branch, he's also the head of the legislature, and under the Canadian system, can pretty much make up the court however he or she wants. He's been in charge for the last 4 years. He's one of the youngest prime ministers, not only in Canadian history, but in the history of former British colonies. And if this election would have been held about 18 months ago, it would have been a cakewalk. His party would more likely than not only have gotten majority, but would have expanded it. But they kind of screwed up. Well, he kind of screwed up. Back me up a second here. Let me see if you heard this before. The head of the government had a situation with one of his friends, told the Attorney General, hey, let this slide. Don't prosecute very well. The Attorney General kind of said, that's not really what happens. Eventually gets fired, that Attorney General, and you've had a scandal that's been broiling your country for almost 2 years. I know that could never happen in the United States, but that's what's happening right now in Canada. As the SNC Lavalin affair, as it is called, basically Trudeau told one of his buddies, hey, don't prosecute very much. And the Attorney General said, no, I really do have to prosecute. Fired her, and, well, it's been the biggest campaign issue for over a year. So much so that it may actually cost Trudeau the election. And there have been calls by some conservatives that, hey, they should prosecute. That could never happen in the United States. Their main opponent is this guy, Andrew Scheer. He's the head of the Conservative Party. And, he doesn't exactly look like Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, of course, is the son of Canadian royalty. His dad was prime minister for decades. Andrew Scheer's biggest claim of fame before becoming the leader of the Conservatives was that he was a parliamentarian? Yeah, the guy who dictates rules and order was this guy. Not exactly the guy that you scream, hey, leadership! Yep, he won on the 13th ballot of the Canadian leadership system, and again, one of the differences between our system and the Canadian system is Canadians don't really pick their leader. It's all through party leadership, and then they go from there. Again, our system isn't as undemocratic as people think it is. At least we have systems and places and points. Canadians just kind of go, hey, here's a meeting, and you better show up if you want to vote. And they voted 13 times, and eventually they got this guy. Now, these are the two major parties. The Conservatives are the Conservative Party of Canada. They're not very socially conservative. The party has a policy that they're kind of cool with abortion. And one of the reasons that Canadians have sort of attacked this guy is he's a little bit more socially conservative than most conservatives would be. And that's sort of the two major themes. If you're a liberal, is hey, stay the course. And if you're conservative, it's like, hey, this is our time. Their actual slogan is, it's time for you to get ahead. Besides the SLP Lavalin scandal, it's the economy. The Canadian economy is very intertwined to the United States, and their biggest export is oil and gas. Oil and gas prices are very low. The Canadians are not exactly in a great position because of trade. The Trump trade, not only has it hurt the United States, but it has, of course, hurt Canada, as Canada's biggest export market is the US. And that has been an issue for the Conservative Party. One of the reasons that they want to get into power. Now, much like the United States, there's a very good chance that the party in blue, like in our country, will get the most votes, and the party in red will take control of the government. Latest polls that are out there, poll of polls, show the Conservatives are up somewhere between 0 and 2% nationwide, but running up the score in British Columbia, Alberta, and the prairies, and losing close elections in Ontario and Quebec, where a big chunk of the populace lives. Now, Canada does have multiple parties, and the Conservatives and the Liberals are the two major ones, but there are 4 other candidates of different levels of interest. This person is the leader of the New Democrats, and his name is Jagmeet Singh. He's the first person of color, you could say, who is head of a major party in Canadian history, and the first person of Sikh birth to be leading a country in North America. The NDP is to the far left of the Canadian populace. Generally, they do well in Quebec and in the Maritimes, but there kind of is a anti-Semitic package to them, as many progressives are. Many progressives are just sort of anti-Semitic. That's historically been their sort of Achilles heel for the far left. And the fact that they've only in their history, they've been around for about 60 years, they've only been the opposition one time, they've never actually led, and they do kind of struggle when they do actually get leadership in the provinces. Their support has been divided, that far left, with this lady, Elizabeth May. Now, Elizabeth May is the head of the Green Party, and, well, her party has kind of picked up that anti-Semitic past. There are some crazies in their party that are definitely anti-Jewish. And now, right now, they have 2 members. Elizabeth May has been there for a long time, and Canadian press loves to say, oh, she's leading a party. Well, it hasn't really been one. They've been averaging about 5% in the polls and elections for the longest of times. But in recent polls, while the Conservatives and the Liberals are around 34% each, and the New Democrats are at 13, the Greens are up to about 10, which is a big leap forward for them, especially since their vote is, again, concentrated, where the NDP is not so much. To get official party status, you need 12 members in Parliament. The NDP might not hit that total. The Greens won't hit it, but they are definitely dragging down that far left to the point where Conservatives are going to pick up seats where they shouldn't. And that divided left could affect so that neither of these far left parties get as much vote as they normally would. If they were more unified, or if they were falling under the NDP label, you might have a real minority government situation. You will not have that. The Liberals or Conservatives will be significantly ahead in Parliament. They may not have a majority, but generally speaking, they will not have to go to the NDP to govern. Now, on the separatist side, Quebec has always had a separatist movement wing in it. And the Bloc Québécois has been around since 1993 in national politics. Again, all of their vote is concentrated in Quebec. So even though they're at 4%, they are looking to get somewhere between 10 and 25 members in Parliament. Right now, they sit at 10. At one time in 1993, the Conservatives did such a lousy job nationwide that they went from the government to 2 members, and the NDP became the official loyal opposition because there was such a split on the right. The NDP, the Bloc Québécois, tends to be, again, a more left-turn side. They are an independence party. So you do get some members there who would be conservative but want independence for Quebec. Also weighing down the ticket in Quebec is something called the People's Party. The People's Party is basically the Never Trumpers. So they're headed by a man by the name of Maxime Brienard, who basically is a spoilsport. Did not win the leadership battle. Decided to take his ball and form his own party. This individual is polling at about, or in the country, is polling at less than 4%, but it is mostly a conservative vote that he's drawing, and it's more concentrated in Quebec. Who knows if they even get a seat, but it is weighing down the party vote. And that is important because, again, the latest polls show that the Conservatives will probably get the most votes. They're the party in blue in Canada, just like Hillary did, and yet the red will probably get the most seats, and just like it was here. Now, Canada generally is a watermark for the United States as to where politics are going. Back in the 2000s, there was a move to unify the right. When they finally got into leadership, they ruled for a very long time. It was a nice showing that, you could look to Canada and go, hey, this is what's going to be there. When the Conservatives were starting to go out of power, while yes, the parties are different, the mood was that there was going to be massive change. You could tell that change was in the air, and it wasn't just in the party, but it was a change back to, I guess you could say that there would be a fundamental party and divisions within it. So when it came to the election last time in 2015, the fact that Justin Trudeau, a very young man, very unaccomplished individual, but very well known, became prime minister, could have been a signal that, hey, maybe the United States or other countries would follow that lead. Now, while the United States obviously has a different political mentality of that person, the idea of somebody not necessarily being, polished, or I would say being better known than necessarily being receptive, became the norm. This election could be a good sign for 2020 if the Conservatives either win the majority or a plurality of seats for someone like Joe Biden. It's a good signal because if the Conservatives can get that, it's basically saying, hey, around the world, in your own backyard, we would like stability, even if it's boring, just because we are tired of crazy. And while, yes, the Lavalin scandal is not to the same level as the scandals in the Trump administration, it does hit home for a lot of people that Justin Trudeau maybe is not wise enough for his age and is a little too swarmy for some people. If the Liberals get a majority of the seats, especially if they don't get the plurality of the vote, it's a very good sign for the president of our country, because it will basically be saying, hey, continue to get where you're getting your vote. In Canada, it is more regional, by country instead of by urban and rural divide. But the same sort of premise holds. If there is a minority government, meaning that no party gets 170 seats, then you could be looking at a very much coming in 2020 of, could you have the divided government? Could you have the Republicans maintaining the Senate but losing the presidency? it'll be a telltale sign. Could you have, maybe the president gets reelected but loses the Senate? It'll be much more chaotic in the vote. So the election again is October 21st. My prediction this far out is that the conservatives get the most vote. But again, it's much like our system. It's not how many votes you get, it's where you get those votes. Those votes are going to be concentrated in the West and the prairies. The Liberals will get the most seats, though I don't think they get a majority. But I don't think they will have to add one of these third parties. Eventually, I think the Greens and the NDP will have to come together if they want to have a shot at governance. My final predictions are you need 170 for majority. I'll say that the Liberals get 160. The Conservatives will get 140. The Bloc Québécois will get about 20. The NDP and the Green will divide most of the other votes, probably leaning a little bit more for the NDP in Quebec and the Maritimes. And the Green will get their Elizabeth May and a handful of other seats, maybe 5 of that 30. So the NDP Bloc Conservatives will be the official opposition, but I don't think they will combine to try to challenge the Liberals in government. Technically, it would be a 4-year, granted it's a 5-year mandate. They would have to have an election by 2021 in, I think it'd be November, but I don't think the government will last very long. And I do believe that the Canadians will have another election by they have to have it by 2023. I think they'll have it by 2021. The government will fall. So those are my picks. Like and subscribe, hate and comment, and we'll talk to you soon.